All right, let's talk about the future of food. But what if I told you that the future of dairy might have absolutely nothing to do with cows? We're going to dive into a technology that's literally brewing real protein in a lab, and it could change everything, from your morning protein shake to the planet itself.
So, get a load of this. Looks like a pretty standard tub of whey protein, right? Well, here's the wild part. It is packed with real, honest-to-goodness whey, but not a single cow was involved in making it. Not one.
And that right there is the billion-dollar question. How on earth do you get dairy without the dairy cow? Well, the answer comes from some pretty brilliant science, using a method that's, surprisingly similar to how you'd brew a craft beer.
And look, this isn't some far-off sci-fi concept we're talking about. This is happening right now. It's on store shelves today, all thanks to a huge move by one of the biggest food giants on the planet.
The product is called Organ Better Whey, and it's from Nestle. Now, this isn't a plant-based alternative that's just trying to imitate whey. No, this is bio-identical. It is the same protein molecule. And here's the kicker. It's totally lactose-free, which is an absolute game-changer for the nearly 70% of people in the world who can't properly digest dairy.
So how in the world do you brew protein without a cow? Well, the secret lies in harnessing some of the tiniest yet most powerful biological factories on Earth, microbes.
The process has a name: precision fermentation. It's a pretty cool idea. You know how we use yeast to turn sugar into beer, right? Well, imagine taking that same process, but instead of giving the yeast instructions to make alcohol, scientists give it the genetic recipe to produce something else entirely, like whey protein. It's a microbrewery, but for food.
So here's the basic recipe. Step 1. You need the blueprint. You give these tiny microbes the exact DNA instructions for making whey. Step 2 is the fuel. You put them in a big tank, a fermenter, and you feed them simple sugars. Think of it as their lunch. Step 3 is the brew. The microbes munch on the sugar, and like these little biological factories, they just start pumping out pure whey protein. And finally, you just filter everything out, and what you're left with is a perfect, pure, bioidentical protein.
Okay, so the science is incredibly cool, no doubt. But why is this blowing up on such a massive scale right now? Well, it turns out it's being driven by this perfect storm of two powerful forces: the future of our planet and a massive, massive financial opportunity.
First, let's just talk about the environmental impact for a second. An analysis showed that producing protein this way can slash CO2 emissions by up to 97% compared to beef. Just let that number sink in. That's not just an improvement, that's a potential revolution in sustainability. It also uses way less water and way less land. And then you've got the other major driver, the money. Oh yeah, the global market for this technology is projected to just explode, hitting over $57 billion by 2032. This is not a niche little science experiment, it's shaping up to be a whole new massive industry. And to really visualize that growth, just look at this trajectory. The market is expected to leap from around $4 billion in 2025 to over $57 billion just 7 years after that. That's an insane compound growth rate of over 40% per year. We are literally watching a new multi-billion-dollar industry being born right in front of us.
So who is actually building this future? It's not just one or two companies tinkering away in a lab. A whole new food ecosystem is forming, with everyone from scrappy little startups to the world's biggest food corporations trying to get in on the action.
And what's really interesting is just how diverse this whole scene is. On one side, you've got the Goliaths, the Nestle's and Unilevers of the world. On the other side, you've got these bold, disruptive startups like Vivici, really pushing the boundaries. And then crucially, you have the regulators, the government bodies who are trying to write the rules for this whole new game. And believe me, these players are making serious moves. New Zealand's dairy giant Fonterra is backing a massive 4 million-liter fermentation plant in the UAE. The startup Vivici has already launched its own whey protein right into the super-competitive US market. And the UK government just gave its Food Standards Agency almost £1.5 million just to build a hub to make safety approvals faster. The momentum is definitely real.
But, as exciting as all of this is, we got to pump the brakes for a second. The road ahead isn't perfectly smooth. We need a little bit of a reality check here. There are some major hurdles to clear before fermentation tanks replace pastures on a global scale.
And I think this quote from venture capitalist Steve Molino just hits the nail on the head. When a behemoth like Nestle launches its own product, it's a double-edged sword. It's fantastic validation for the tech, for sure, but it's also a massive warning shot to all the startups out there that the big players are here to compete directly. So let's break down the three biggest roadblocks. First, the cost.
Right now, Nestlé's Better Whey costs almost double what its own plant-based protein does. That price has to come down. Second, regulatory red tape. Getting these novel foods approved is a slow, expensive, country-by-country process. And third, commercial reality. Let's be honest, not every product is a home run. General Mills launched an animal-free cream cheese, but they pulled it from the market about a year later. Early stumbles are just part of the process.
Which brings us right back to the big question. We have this technology with incredible promise and billions of dollars are backing it, but it's also facing some very real challenges. So is the future of our food really going to be found inside a fermenter? The honest answer is, we don't know yet. But one thing is for sure, the next few years will decide whether our protein comes from a cow or from a culture.